Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. This is going to be my everything great about Zenkaiger so far video. I might do another one of these later, maybe a couple depending on what types of things happen in the show. But this is inspired by the videos I've done, sort of everything great about Saber so far, and everything great about Dino Fury so far at the mid-season point. Because some people have brought up maybe I should do a Zenkaiger version, and that's what I'm going to do here. So, mainly because, A, then I have one for all three series I watch, but also because I feel like Zenkaiger is a very interesting series in the fact that it's very different. I feel that it's putting off a lot of people, understandably so, because it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea with some of its strangeness. Even for me, there's elements of it that aren't my cup of tea. I don't know why we're drinking so much tea, but I see a lot of people that are sort of just turned off by it, and I wanted to give reasons of maybe why you should give it a second chance, and also just some things that I think it's doing well, and kind of surprisingly well. So to start off, I want to say the slow burn. This was one of the first things that took me by surprise in the very beginning of the show, especially in a series like this that is leaning a little more towards the silly and fun. Because a lot of Toku series, even ones that are more serialized, will really rush things and just vomit debuts at you. And it's more common even so, I think, in silly series. So that's why I was so surprised to see them take a slow burn approach to the initial introductions, where we introduced every ranger one at a time, kind of got to know them, and as a result we also introduced the mecha slower and everything. And it's kind of funny because later then they introduced like Stacy and Tukaiser right on top of each other. But at the very beginning I was very surprised by the slow burn, which just kind of makes it more enjoyable for me because you kind of get a chance to know everybody in a lot more slow of a fashion, and it also kind of gives you something to look forward to in the early batch of episodes. So if you're trying to give the show a chance, like each episode there's some sort of event to look forward to, and I thought that was something that was really nice about it. Also, I think they've done a pretty good job at keeping the plot going. I mean, who knows? I'm recording this after episode 10, and episode 11 looks like a filler, so I don't know where we're going from here. But as of right now, there hasn't been an enormous amount of wasteful filler. After we got those initial introductions, there was a small amount of filler, but none of it really felt that useless. And then now that we're into the Stacy and Tukaiser stuff, it feels like there's always something happening, or always a little revelation about some of the mysteries and whatnot. And again, surprisingly, given that it's kind of a more silly-leaning series, I feel there's a decent amount of momentum and investment in the story. I'm not like super invested in it where I'm like thinking about it when I'm not watching it a ton, but I've been surprised about how serialized-ish it can be and the decent momentum and investment it has. Speaking of, I also think they've been doing a pretty solid job with the characters so far in terms of balance. I was worried before this series started that it might be one of those where the characters feel like one-note cartoons and don't really have a lot of character to them. And they do have those elements. A lot of them do have a personality trait that can essentially lean itself to them just doing bits and being one-note cartoons. But they've also had some really nice character beats within it, you know, especially for Zenkaiser, who's definitely still that type of leader that I'm not a fan of, where they just kind of shriek optimism into your face. But he's actually had some surprisingly decent character moments, just sort of giving us some insight into who he is, into him sort of understanding others like Tukaiser and Juran and whatnot, and just surprisingly quiet little moments that make him feel more like a character and not a cartoon. And we've gotten that too with Tukaiser's introduction as well. We've kind of gotten to know him and his family a little bit more, gotten to know a little bit more about Juran. We've gotten some stuff about Gaon, kind of talking about his hatred for Kikanoids, which hasn't been fully expanded on yet, but based on the last time it was brought up around when Stacy appeared, it seems like it's going to be more than just a character bit. I feel like as of this recording we haven't gotten as much from Majin or Vroon, but just of what we have gotten, I am pleasantly surprised that we've actually gotten some quieter moments that feel like nice character moments and not just caricature moments. On the other side of that, there is also some charming stuff about the silly dynamic of this group. They can be quite charming and funny, I think. I found myself amused on more than one occasion by their antics and chemistry, and some of the lines they'll say to each other, and the interactions between them based off of who they are as characters, or just little funny observations they'll make, like that one where Juran was talking to one of the monsters and he's like, hey, are you the one causing this really specific problem? Or more recently when they saved everybody with that wall that fell down and Juran's just like, oh my god, my back hurts. And there's always just funny little blink and you missed them lines like that, whether it's just of one character that just being themselves or a character interaction. And also little quirks like Juran liking the dance music of the Changers because it's kind of meta and it's kind of funny, and so he'll dance alongside it. In fact, thinking about this right now, I'm surprised they haven't done something with that in regards to the fact that Tukaiser actually dances as a part of his henshin sequence. But I just like little quirky character beats like that, and I found that's been an enjoyable thing. And going off that too, it is a more silly series, so that's something that will turn some people off, but there is some funny stuff with that. You know, you have stuff like the monster making everyone sleepy, and you got Zenkaiger leaning against the mecha console and stuff like that. So if you can kind of enjoy stuff like that and lean into that, it's got some pretty amusing stuff with that. You know, like I said, that skirts a line for me because sometimes it can be a bit much. It can turn me off of a show as well. But when I'm able to enjoy it, Zenkaiger has a good time with itself, and I think that you can have a good time with that if you can appreciate that and kind of lean into what they're going for. Also, something else, just for a small thing, I like the way the monsters work with them each representing a different parallel world. It kind of gives them a unique reason for being different each week, and it gives a different conflict each week. But most of all, again, as of this recording, this could be something they change later down the road, but thus far, one of the things I've brought up in almost every review is that I really like that it leads to a unique mech fight. Like, usually the monster's unique world attribute will lead to a mech fight that's different based on some sort of gimmick, whether it's a sushi conveyor belt or the bright sun or just the world being populated with mushrooms. It makes the mech fights feel a little bit fresh for each world. Some can be more silly than others, but it's just a creative beat that keeps things going. I also have to say I'm really impressed with the fact that they actually explain the mythology most of the time. I mean, there's still obviously some dangling mysteries, both with this show and with Dino Fury. Oddly enough, I see people get mysteries and unanswered questions confused with plot holes, and both PR and Sentai are known for plot holes, but it's not a plot hole if it's something that's just not been explained yet. But there certainly is still some things dangling, and of course the general confusion over how Sentai behaves because they're all in different universes, but in the same universe depending on what day of the week. There is stuff like that. But in terms of the core mythology, most of the stuff has been explained. We know where the powers come from. Within Kaiser's debut episodes, we knew where his powers come from. We knew why they look like the Gokaiger's powers. We know how the gears work. We know why the Kikanoid's world merged with the human world. And I appreciate stuff like that, because I'm a mythology fan, and I've talked about this in past Sentai videos if you're a longtime viewer, but oftentimes Sentai will set up a mythology around the morphers and the powers in the world, and then never explain it, or explain it with toku nonsense. And it's always disappointing because it's something that'll hook me, and then they'll let me down. And it kind of breaks my immersion a little bit. And I like that they have explained it in here. It helps me be more invested in the world, and it helps me enjoy the show more, and be more intrigued by the world and want to learn more about it and see what else they add to it. And they've done a pretty good job of not leaving a lot of that dangling, especially with stuff like Kaiser, where a lot of series they might just, you know, leave that to the wayside of how the powers just happen to be just like the Zenkaisers, or the Zenkaigers, that's always mixed up. But I like that they actually have done a pretty good job so far explaining it. Again, especially for a more silly series, where I don't expect them to explain it, I've been rather impressed. And the last two things I want to touch on is, one, I think they've done a pretty good job incorporating the anniversary aspects. It's certainly a big part of the aesthetics, as every main ranger, even the evil ones, are based off of past designs. And of course we have the gear abilities, and then now Stacy's summoning, and it's definitely a big part aesthetically, and it's definitely a big part of the show and the appeal for a lot of people, and that's, you know, something that's exciting for a lot of people to see. But I actually don't feel like it's been overwhelming, in the sense that I think the show still has its own story. Like, I could totally see taking out summoning Sentai and using the Sentai gears and having a similar-esque story without the anniversary elements. And I think that it's been just the right amount so far. Like, there's cool moments like Stacy summoning other Sentai or summoning all the robots and them having the boxes from the toys and stuff like that. But I still feel like the core of Zenkaiger's story is still there, where the anniversary stuff does feel like an aesthetic to me, and it can be fun, but it doesn't feel like it's solely a vehicle for that. I mean, it's not as good as Gokaiger in the sense that I was more invested in Gokaiger's story and characters, but I would say that I do feel that it's separated its own story enough where I could take out the anniversary aesthetic and I could still see this series existing. And it feels like, even though there is a lot of fan service, it doesn't feel like it's 100% only fan service just to me. Like, I could see this being a fun show about Sentai robot teams that use gear powers and fight monsters from alternate worlds. And I also feel like the show's done a good job of surprising us. Like, the Stacy and Kaiser introductions happened very fast and close to each other, but I feel like we're so early in and there's a lot of cool stuff happening recently, and we have so much real estate left in the show that who knows how much more awesome stuff can happen as the show goes on. And the designs overall have also really grown on me, especially the Ranger, but proper Ranger designs like Zenkaiger and Zenkai Red and Stacy and Chukaiser, just some really good stuff there. So that is my video on all the stuff that I think is great about Zenkaiger so far. Let me know what you guys think is great about it so far, and if you're having a hard time with it, maybe give it a second shot. I'm certainly enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, since I'm very tired of Anniversary stuff and it looked like a more loud show, and while it can certainly annoy me, I've been impressed by how much I've actually been enjoying it. That's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.